Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I am your host Sree Iyer, and it's as always a pleasure to welcome Sridhar Chityala ji to our hangout. Sridhar ji, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
Namaskaram and good afternoon, and nice to be here after again back this afternoon on a very warm and very mild but sunny afternoon here in New York.
Viewers, we are going to talk about Twitter, its performance, the fact that its stock has dipped 20% today and it recovered a little bit after that. But we wanted to look at Twitter, its prospects, the reason why it took such a beating. There are many reasons being put out there. To understand the real reason, we have to look at the numbers, and who better than Sridhar Chityala ji, who is a numbers expert. Sridhar ji, what do you make of Twitter's numbers?
I think just if we take a look at broadly the Q3 performance in terms of the numbers, is the metric that they measure, just like Facebook has number of active users per day, per month, and per average per year. So they have this monthly monetizable daily active users. Monetizable are those people to whom an ad can be served, right? Not all people are served ads. Has come in at 187 million versus 195 million that was expected. This is the lowest performing number in their estimates. Only 1 million was added from Q2 to Q3, right? So the number is very small relative to what was estimated. When we look at the business model itself, the business model is driven by 80% of its revenues coming from advertising and 20% of its revenues roughly coming from what they call data services, which is people who integrate Twitter into other data sources to give a more analytical framework. So optics-wise, from you take a look at the numbers seem to reflect that they performed relative beyond expectations to the estimates. But revenue and the stock price is always correlated to not current and past, but is to the future. So the market is facing gyrations, and most notably Twitter in that lot. And that's the reason why you have this huge 20% kind of a dip.
As a matter of fact, you're absolutely right. Facebook and other online companies also had a down day today. This week was a down week for Dow because of the fact that the second round of stimulus has not been passed, and now we are on the elections week next week. So we also saw some other companies also not being very sure of their earnings. So looking forward, just share with us what you think will be the timeline when a stimulus plan will be agreed to. Do you think that the decisive win one way or the other? Because there's the other option that it could be a hung verdict, which means that you're looking at many days before the next president is chosen. So all three scenarios play it out for us, sir. What do you think? How do you think the market is going to move?
Great. When we take a look at the Twitter amongst the kind of the elite social league players, and also bring Amazon into the picture, Twitter is quite unique. It is the most. Its revenue is driven by advertising. Its revenue is driven by advertising money spent by public companies, which are consumer facing, driven by emotions and sentiments. And besides the stimulus part of it, how much of the sentiments play based on the amount of money that that advertisers would like to spend on the platform. Twitter has been at the centerpiece of the storm in terms of, it is the topical kind of thematic around the 230 amendment. And the much of the controversy has stemmed from the fact that the New York Post access was denied. The article relating to Hunter Biden was stopped. Centerpiece of the controversy. Similarly, in Q2 and Q3, Q2 most notably, when the riots kind of broke out, they took specific positions. Advertisers immediately pulled back to some extent on the advertising spend on the platform. Generally, Twitter is associated with liberal and much more activist in the kind of their narrative, though they tend to take a position that they're neutral, but that doesn't seem to be the belief of the universal humanity. So in terms of what the forecast looks like, the question that you have framed, firstly, there's no stimulus, right? So stimulus helped Q2 and Q3. Q4, there's no stimulus. And against a backdrop of rising pandemic, which means there's more costs. Twitter has not quantified as yet what the costs in Q4 are. Whereas in the case of Amazon, for example, they've been very specific that the Q4 number is going to be impacted because they are making a provision of minimum $1 billion towards the cost of what you call a state of preparedness for the pandemic, extension of the pandemic, sanitization, testing, and all those kinds of things. So such number is not, and so you saw that they have given a Q4 range of $1 to $1.5 billion. So if you kind of extrapolate that into Twitter, so there's going to be issues around how much of advertising spend is going to go in. Is there going to be drivers of advertising money that is spent? Similarly, the consumer engagement and the consumer and the corporate spend, there was to some extent, the balancing that came from stimulus. There is no stimulus in Q4 right now as we speak. Okay, November 3rd, what happens, we don't know. But there is right now no projected kind of outlay. Even then, if they make it, it's going to take some time for it to filter into the system. So for which much of the Q4 will be lost. So when you take a look at these essential factors, which is spend, stimulus, Twitter being much more active at the centerpiece of the platform. Next in the player is Facebook. Next in the player is Google. And generally, Amazon stays away from this social media type of controversy, very similar to kind of Apple, right? So therefore, they try to stay away. So Twitter is right at the top of the league. So when you're seeing, market sentiments being reflected in the market pricing, then you see Twitter being right there. And I don't think Twitter's hearings at the Senate, it went down very well. So when you put all these kind of factors together, you can say that you could have more headwinds for Twitter relative to the other players.
Yes, indeed. And with that, we bring this conversation about Twitter to an end. As always, Sridharji, namaskar, and thank you for sharing your thoughts on this. And we'll be back with our daily hangout on Monday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern and 5:30 p.m. It may be slightly different because of daylight saving zone. So it might be 6:30 p.m. for Indian Standard Time. So we will confirm that via tweet and Facebook post. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Thank you. Namaskar, Ji.